Hello, good evening, parents. First, let me introduce myself. Just a moment. Hey, parents. My name is Andy Kuek. Uh, for those of you who had children in my stretcher, um, some of you may be familiar with my name. I'd just like to introduce myself again. Andy Kuek. I'm currently the head of my stretcher's High Ability Growth Program. And prior transitioning to this role, I was actually the head of my stretchers GEP program from the years 2015 to the year 2025. Okay, and these are some of my personal information. I was an ASEAN scholar when I was in secondary and junior college. Um, just a just a quick one here. Uh, who for the parents who are attending this session tonight, who are for those parents who have children at primary one, can we have a show of hands? How many parents here have children in primary one? Okay, okay, okay. We have several here. What about parents? What about parents with children in primary two? Okay, we have several here, and I suppose the rest of the attendees, parents here, children in primary three. Okay, okay, okay. So let me just go straight into the presentation tonight. It is about unlocking potential high ability growth journey with a child and how our My Structure program could support capable learners in Singapore's new high ability growth landscape. Just another show of hands. Any parents here whose children have taken part in the previous year's GP examination? It could be an elder sibling of your children now. Yes, we have several parents who have children who actually taken the old GEP selection and screening examinations. Okay, good. So let's take a look. So historically, the GP program okay, many of you who have children, who have older children, you will know that at primary three level, students in Singapore, they have the opportunity to take two tests, right? Sometime in August and the other one in the second round in October. So if they do well enough for the first round of the screening test, they will be invited back to sit for the second round of the selection test. Okay. Since last year, right, MOE has announced that the 2025 cohort will be the last, which means that there will be no longer a nationwide exam of which students are put through two rounds of tests, and eventually, if they qualify, they'll be streamed to the 9 GEP schools in Singapore. So that was the old system. So what is the new system? Right? So the new system, it is meant to be more broad-based, which means that the previous system in going forward, MOE thinks it could be a bit too narrow because why the system only effectively benefits handful of students. If you look at the whole entire student population in Singapore at the primary three level, we're probably looking at maybe 30 or 30 plus thousand. So effectively, only about 300 to 400 students eventually get to benefit from the current GEP program. What what are the changes here? So at any point, parents, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat from time to time and I'll answer those questions as we go along. Okay. So what are the key changes? First of all, under the new program, of course, they will need to have selection process of which students who do well, they are given the opportunity to what pursue uh, pursue the subject of which they are good at within their own school. So there is no requirement. There will be no longer the need for your child to be transferred to another school if it's not in the GP school. So in that sense, there is more continuity because why your children will get to continue to learn among friends who have been with him for the first 3 years of primary school. And the second part, I think, is something that is really interesting here. The entry level will be flexible. So from the onset, if you were to read the information from the newspaper, it says that instead of the 2 rounds of exams of which children will sit for, now they will only need to sit for 1 round of tests, right? Although not much information has been provided since, but broadly, the MOE says that children at the start they will have to sit for uh, 2 tests, right? English and mathematics. So that is in a way similar to the first round of the GP examination of the past. Okay, so that is something that is similar. Okay. However, having said that, uh, MOE also recognizes the fact that students will mature at different times, right? It's not necessarily that all children who do well into the who gets in the GP at primary 3 will continue to do well at primary 4, primary 5, primary 6. So this is a fallacy. Yeah. And children who do not get into the GP program doesn't mean that they cannot do better than students in the GP program. So, being a teacher myself for the past 15 years at my church, I've seen many, many cases of which children have done exceedingly well for themselves, even though they're not in GP. Because why? They mature they mature several years later. Because as we know, primary 3 is still a very young age by any measure. Okay. So with this, there will be different entry points. Other than primary 3 sitting for the test, the MOE also recognizes that as long as children, right, shows progress or shows good ability in English, maths, they will again be given the chance to enter into these programs later part in their primary school journey. Okay, so exactly in what form that has not been uh, it has not exactly been shared publicly with hasn't been shared with the public yet. But that is the intention of the Ministry of Education's new HAG program. Identification would be broader. Now it's very narrow, right? So for parents who are familiar with the previous GEP examination format, they will sit for 2 rounds. It's basically maths and English for first round. And the second round, again, they will sit for maths, English, plus another 2 rounds of general ability test, right? General ability 1 and 2. Okay. So this identification will be broader, which means that it's not solely based on a paper-based test onset, right? Along the way, there will be still opportunities for them to take part in the program. What this also means that this presents a tremendous opportunity for many students who are reasonably good at their studies. Why I say this because I've taught many GP students, students who have been into GP. And I also during my time of teaching them, there were several kids who evidently are very gifted. You know, they could breeze through their work, and most of the time they will do very, very well, right? In all the classwork as well as all the diagnostic tests during the course of the GP program. But however, during a one-time sitting, right, anything could go wrong. Just imagine you are not feeling well on the day, right? Or maybe you were caught up in a jam and feeling a bit nervous, and on the day you don't perform well. And the fact of the matter is that the separation between the first because GP and eventually they pick about 400 students, right? So imagine from the first to the 400 students. 400 students, right? So imagine if the top score, let's say, imagine the full score is 400. If you were to reduce 1 mark all the way to the 400, you'll be close to zero. Is it possible for this students to be separated by 400 marks? Definitely not. So which means that the first student in the GP program to the last qualifier, they will probably be separated by very close. The margin is very, very close. Probably in my mind, it's definitely could be anything. It's definitely less than, let's say, you only tested in 4 subjects, right? So imagine four, right? You probably within the margin of maybe 50 marks. Okay, so within these 50 marks, they're going to cram all the foreign students in. So it's extremely competitive. So if you lose just 1 mark, just imagine you just lose half a mark or 1 mark, you'll be out of the GP program because the cutoff is exactly at 400. Or in other words, top 1% of the Singapore cohort. Okay, so I've seen many students who become very disappointed. So many a times, and it's common after examination, I speak to them just to clear them up because we are very sure of their ability, and it's also been proven true that years beyond they've gone to do so much better than anyone could have anticipated. Okay, so this system is actually better. Why? Because 10% of each primary year group gets to participate as opposed to 1%. So you can see it's a big difference from 10% to one from 1% to 10%. So it's a big opportunity for every student to have the opportunity to experience an enriched program within Singapore education system. Okay, so this is this point. Okay, so why this matters to your child? So I can just share with you my story. Okay, personally, I grew up in Malaysia, a small town called Pahat in Malaysia, and in those days, my parents were teachers, so which means that at a very young age, my mom exposed me to the English language. I was reading quite frequently, and my mom also make sure that I do some homework. But you realize that the curriculum by is compare Singapore as an education system, it far surpasses many of the countries, not just within the ASEAN region, but across many countries, against many countries around the world. So I was breezing through, right? Everything was too easy for me. Okay, everything was quite easy for me. So we are like getting hundreds without even doing much. So what happened was that. So what happened was that. Uh, so what happened was that my eldest brother, right? He was about 4 years older than I am. So he took the ASEAN scholarship test, right? And he managed to enroll himself into Raffles Institution. And from there, he was sharing with us, the three younger siblings, the rigor of the program, right? How much more they were learning, and that really motivated us. So my second brother Alan, who is 1 year younger than Alvin, he too passed the examination and he was enrolled into RJC the following year. Then after that, it came to my turn. I took the test at primary six. There are a few entry levels. It's the same thing, right? Very much like the GEP. We have to take English test, we got to take a maths test, and we got to take an IQ test. The time is called an IQ test. Okay, but then I didn't pass. Okay, I didn't pass. I failed. Then after that, my younger brother, who is 2 years younger, he took the same test at P6 and he passed. So that left me with myself in Malaysia. So I told myself the next entry level is at secondary three. So I need to study hard in order to get the opportunity. So when I came, I realized that the education is so enriched that I really feel that I benefited uh, from the system. So having an enriched curriculum, because at the end of the day, if your child has the ability, is up to the system to stretch us. So I think so. It's not what I think. Singapore has the education system to really stretch students more so even these days because students have become much better academically over the years. Okay, so what are some of the traits? If your child shows curiosity, uh, they have a strong interest in solving problems, and they are very disciplined. They are very motivated. So these are the traits that that we should be encouraging them to learn more within their ability. Okay. So at this point, maybe I just take a look at the chat to see if there are any questions. Okay, maybe I just pause for a while. Okay, maybe I just take note of this question. One of the questions is that my son is in primary three. There appears to be subject-based streaming, where students go to different classes for different subjects. I found it interesting as there were no examinations in P2. Okay. Uh, okay, this one maybe I have to find out a bit more. But from what I know, as to this question, I know for sure. Okay, maybe not at the primary three level, but I know for sure, like GEP schools like Tao Nan, if the students passes, if their student pass the round two of the GEP examination, they will be in GEP, specifically in GEP. Okay, so they will not be studying mathematics or English or science with the other non-GEP students. However, I do know that for children who pass round one of the test, Tao Nan actually makes special provision for them to take other enrichment classes, which means that they get to do special science classes, they get to do special maths classes. Okay, so that I know because there is really a measure that this group is actually, although they didn't go to the GP, they are actually 10%, and the school wants to continue to nurture their strength in some of these subjects. So as to primary three, why are they able to stream without tests? I think logically that would be difficult, right? It cannot be random. Um, but having said that, at primary three level, I'm not too sure how differentiated the program could be because at primary three level, I would think that the syllabus is still reasonably straightforward. Okay, okay, let's continue. So for parents, it's a big plus because why? Less disruption. The routine continues. Stay in the same school. Okay, and also this gives every school the opportunity because at the end of the day, the school actually knows best, right? So the reality is also this: when students in the past, when students get into the GP program, some parents start to become very concerned. Hey, teacher Andy, I'm now very concerned. Should I be transferring my child to another school? What if he cannot adapt to the environment? What if the program is too difficult for the child? What if he cannot cope? Can he drop out? What if he feels too stressed? So together with, although there's certain level of prestige that comes with the program, but the reality is that it comes with a lot of stress as well. In fact, the GEP teachers, they also specially train to monitor for stress in the GP students. So it's not always a bed of roses, right? We have heard the inspiring and nice stories about children who are in the program, but as a teacher who has been teaching these students for many years and being acquainted with parents for all these years, we also know there are certain challenges that people do not do not see. Okay, so here there's continuity, there's support because same school, same friends, same teachers. Okay, so what is high ability growth? Now, reality is this: primary one, primary two, as one of the parents mentioned, there is no test, there's no examination in school. Then how then do you know where your child stands against the rest of the cohort? So realistically lah, in any environment, not only just in education, but at any levels, right? Even as adults we working, there must be a measure to differentiate people with better ability than the rest. So this is exactly what this program will encourage, right? To discover if your child has the ability to take on something more difficult. Okay, so the growth part is not fixed. With the right environment, opportunity, and support, strengths can develop further. I just want to highlight this point. This point is very important because, as I said earlier, I didn't pass the P6 ASEAN scholarship, but I did pass the Sec 3 one. I can tell you what was the difference. After failing for the first time, what I did was that my elder brothers will actually buy me a lot of Singapore revision books, right? And my mother will somehow find a old school teacher who had some nephews or nieces who were studying in Singapore and some are familiar with the Singapore syllabus to come and help tutor me. Even as a scholar, I needed to be tutored. So having said that, what I'm trying to say is that you are motivated and you have some level of ability, you can really stretch yourself given the right exposure and guidance. And I always tell parents, right, for children to previously for children who get a GEP, there must be three parties who are involved, right? Of course, the teacher must be experienced enough to guide the child. And because the children are very young, only at primary three, not all children are motivated. We know, right? Children this age, they can be quite restless, right? And of course, the student themselves. So these three parties must work together hand in hand. Because why? We only see the students 2 hours a week, right? In the previous GP program, we only see them 4 hours, 2 hours English, 2 hours maths. And you can imagine for the rest of the 6 days, what else can you do to help them? So it's really up to the parents, right? To work through with them whatever they have learned over the past week, and even to redo the question or even find new materials for them, and to just keep them constantly in touch, you know, with whatever that is going on in the program. So again, this is imperative, means it's totally necessary, more so for children at P3. Okay. So when some people say, hey, maybe all of you should not, maybe parents, should take it easy, the children are still young. But having said that, there is no limit to learning. There's no limit to learning. As long as your child is capable, they should have the opportunity to stretch themselves. Okay. Okay, so I think this is something that is very common now, right? Very common now. I get many feedback from parents, school is too easy. And of course, if you come across students, right, you will see that they have a very diverse interest. Some have very good general knowledge. They can tell you a lot of history about the world, about how this government in certain countries got established, things like that. Okay. Uh, so this HAG program is meant to make sure that they are constantly stimulated. Okay, they are constantly stimulated uh, uh, intellectually. Okay. So the only other difference in the HAG program going forward is that it's no longer compulsory to take all three, right? Current GEP program, once you're in GEP, you got to do GEP Maths, you got to do GEP English, you got to do GEP Science. Okay, there's no GEP second language. They go to the same classes as the rest of the other mainstream students, right? But when it comes to Maths, English, Science, they have to study together with their own GEP students. So this can be quite stressful. I can share with you why. So last year during my stretcher prize presentation, I had three students from the same GP class in Bishan who were seated in the first row. They were all in GP. So I spoke to all three, right? They only sat for the first mid-year exam. So as you know, the current GEP system is that the test examination is fixed, mid-year and end year, and is set by the GEP branch in MOE, which means that the GP students, all the nine schools will take the same examination. It's not the school examination, it's the MOE branch examination, which means everybody started the same level. So one kid got 98 for maths, right? English was quite good, it's about 90. Science was quite good, right? It's about 92, 90-ish. Okay. So there was this kid who is uh extremely good in English, right? So his English was close to full marks, which is quite quite uh quite exceptional, right? It was close to 100, okay, very close to 100. But I thought having him, his maths was not as solid as the other two, right? So he was averaging about 60, right? Averaging about 60. And he told me his science is about 80. Then there's this other kid, right? His science is almost 100, right? His math was also about 85. His English was about 80-ish. So from this alone, you can see that not all students, GP students, are equal in strength in all the subjects. So that is also unnecessary because it puts unnecessary stress on the students, right? It put the unnecessary stress. So imagine if you see yourself 60 and the rest of friends 90 in the same GP program, definitely they'll be stressed. So in this new program, no need. Okay, you only do you are interested in. You only do what you are good at. And even having a note in the HG in the new HG program, they could drop out anytime when they feel that it's not suitable for them. Okay, so the entry pathway is flexible. The exit pathway is also flexible. So that's a lot less anxiety for parents. So so this is what I've mentioned earlier, because students mature at different periods of time. So there's absolutely no rush. It's not very, it's not 100% sure proof that you do well at GEP, you will confirm do well at PSLE. So this is never, never, never true. Okay. Okay. Any question? Can we know? Okay. So from the information provided so far, there's only one round of tests, right, at the primary three level, and only two tests, English and Maths. There's no two rounds of tests, no two rounds of tests, only one round of tests. Okay, because when it's a school-based test, one round is really enough to pick the top 10%, right? If it's a national exam, it's a bit more difficult. It has to be more selective, which is why there's two rounds. So this one is not as restrictive, which is also why it's only one round. So, okay, this is a good question. Is a test paper same for all school or set by the own HG? So in the system, it was a national exam, okay? One paper for everyone. So as we speak now, OE says they were in consultation with GEP schools, which means that this program is also new to MOE. Okay, it's not that they have fully a fully established system. They are still trying to fine tune and work their way around this system. But broadly, they know this is the direction they want to head to. Means that they want to give this opportunity to more students because it benefits more students. Number one, right? And now all primary schools are more equipped than ever to be able to manage this group of high ability learners. That's a sort of okay. It may not be so in the past, but now teachers are better trained, schools have better facilities, so he has equalized the the playing the playing law has been leveled in many ways. So as to what form, right? Government has not announced. But if you ask me, in my mind, if I'm running the HAG program in within my school, I think the school will have liberty to set the examination paper. But of course, within certain guidelines, there may be certain guidelines given by MOE. The level of difficulty should be this. This should be number of questions. Like your level 5 question could be this number of question, medium, so on and so forth, right? But I would think that it would not be if it had been a national based exam, then MOE school might as well have stuck to the OGT system, right? Where they have to administer everything. So I believe going forward, the schools will have some liberty in deciding the test for the children, but of course within certain guidelines. Okay, but we have to wait for more information. Will school have P3 HAG science selection? So as informed, okay, see so the thing is that how do they get into the HAG science program, right? So that's a good question. So I can just only share what I know from the previous GEP system, right? So I have this student who was very disappointed he didn't get a GP because why the sister got the GP. So I tutored the sister, I tutored him, and they were extremely bright. So he didn't pass the second round, which I was very surprised because in my mind he probably missed by a 1 mark or 2 marks because he's extremely good at what he does. But the mom called me 1 2 weeks after the school reopened at primary four. Say, hey, my son has been invited to take a test in the school so that to see if he's suitable for the science enrichment program. Okay, so in my mind, there are two things. First, he passed the first round, so the one at the school teachers know. Second of all, in primary three, he also must have demonstrated very good ability in science, right? So which means that they are ready to stretch him further by putting him through some form of easy assessment. Okay, it's just probably a formality anyway. Okay, so currently as it is, based on MOE, there is no science test. It's just English and Maths. Okay, and how would they stream them into the HG science program? It depends. It could be in this form, right? They could set a simple test for them based on teachers' observation. So in the new HG program, a lot of discretion is also given to teachers. Means that from their regular engagement with the students, they will also know who are the students who have good ability, and it's also up to them to be able to recommend these students for further enrichment program. Okay. Okay. Uh, So, so okay, so at this point, I would like to take this opportunity to explain to share with parents my stretches high ability program, how we view it, and how we have adjusted our curriculum to make sure that we are well positioned. Although not much information to be shared thereafter, but our curriculum to make sure that we are adjusted so that we are ready when the time comes. Okay, whatever your child be learning in this HSG program, I'm I'm very confident that it will be relevant. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you want to select students who are academically good, there is no other way than through a paper-based exam. It was the same when I came to Singapore 20, more than I'm 48 now. I came when I was 16, so it's about 30 years ago. The system was the same, and the system hasn't shifted, hasn't changed much up to now. So there's no reason for it to change any further, other than the fact it has taken a different form. Different people is going to administer the test. There's a different criteria of people who is going to be selected. Okay. So in our program, we have the core curriculum and the enriched curriculum. So the core curriculum will take care, will address all the necessary components that children will be tested at PSLE. Okay, at PSLE level. So you realize for the current GEP program students, they do very little of the core PSLE curriculum. So, which is why they have very little composition writing, right? They do a lot of uh, very advanced stuff, very abstract stuff, like literary analysis. They do a lot of poem. They do a lot of research work, but that is not something that will be tested on PSLE. So that is the difference between the current GEP program, right? So students in GEP in those days, they learn, especially for English, they learn something that is outside the PSA syllabus most of the time. It's the same for maths. So maths, they will like learn the history of numbers, who came up with this formula, things like that, right? And these are not something that will be it's not something that will be tested on PSLE. So which is why many of the GEP students also come to my stretcher to continue to practice whatever that is needed for PSLE. Okay, so that is our high achiever program. So at high achiever program, HA program, okay, high achiever. So that is for P4, P5, P6. So we have many GP students who currently in GP, but they take our HA program because why? We're going to drill them on all the components necessary for the GP program. So how this HAG program is different for the P3 level. Okay, now my structure, we have the P3 HAG. We also have the P2 HAG. We also have the P1 HAG. I will tell you the difference a bit later, okay? But let me just focus on the P3 HAG. So how is it different from our previous GEP program? Is because now we have added those PSLE core components. Previously, in the OGEP examination, children are only tested on three areas, right? Close, comprehension, and vocab. Only three. There's no writing, there's no oral. But now, being in the HAG program, we have all these core components. We have oral, we have composition writing. We will be showing you uh, some sample later. And this part, why do we call enrich? Now, if you are only focusing on the core curriculum, then it also may not be sufficient to stretch students further, because why? We have really seen how good these GEP students could be, and we also need to make sure that we have the rigor, right, lifted enough, not just to handle the core, but to get as close as possible to what the level was could be, okay, ideally. So we have the enriched program. So prose, grammar, vocabulary comprehension, oral mastery, editing, grammar, these are all covered in our weekly program. Okay. Then what are additional ones? Additional ones, we have general ability. General ability, we are adopting some of this from the existing GP program. Not so much because we think that it will be tested, but as a matter of as a matter of training is important because what does general ability entails? So general ability is simply logic, your ability to reason plus a language component or a non-language component. Okay, I will show some samples of that. Okay, or non-language components. Okay, so this is good training, and like it, believe it or not, this is one of the best way to assess whether a child is naturally gifted. Okay, if you're good in English, yes, you could be naturally gifted because English is difficult to be good at. But for maths, you can definitely change, right? But for children who can see logic, then that is something that is it can be considered as natural. Why we say that? Because if you realize that in primary three in the old system, they do not have a general ability subject in school, right? But still they test it, but they still make the children take the test in round two. Why? Because this is something that they do not need to be taught. Although they can practice and be familiar, but the guiding principle is that this is just logic. If they look at it, they should be able to reason out themselves. They need not be taught or trained. So that's the rationale. Okay. And of course, we have also incorporated expressive writing and many of the components for the HEG program. We also encourage students to speak. As many of us realize, and many of you, as you all know, we have the master speakers program, and some of you who have taken your children may have taken part in our very recent NOC, the National Oratory Competition, which my stretcher was an organizer, was a sponsor of the event. You realize that many students were trained to speak. So why speaking is important, we know, right? No matter how well, uh, no matter how well a student can be academically, but if you want to say, for example, you're applying for a scholarship, obviously, if you're first of all, you need to be good academically. But what if academically, uh, many of the other students on par? Then the only differentiating point is whether or not you're able to communicate well and be a better communicator than the rest of the other applicants. So this is absolutely necessary. In fact, in fact, it's quite a waste because many students, just because of the lack of exposure, they find it difficult to express themselves, and they lose out marks unnecessarily when it comes to uh, oral examination at the end of their primary school journey. Okay, at PSA level. So this is something we strongly encourage, which is also why we have a standalone my uh master speakers to encourage students to speak. And we also take this opportunity to incorporate some speaking elements into our HCG program. So we want to make them well-rounded, not only good at what you can do in PSLE, but we're going to stretch you in your logical thinking, we're going to stretch you in your ability to write expressively, we're going to stretch you in the ability to communicate. So these are three additional things we also want to focus on, because at the end of the day, what is a high growth ability? It's not just academic, it's being more of a well-rounded student. Okay. Okay, I will just show you some of the some of the in-depth some of the some very specific in-depth uh when it comes to English curriculum, how is it curated? So if you look at say for example, right, I'll just quickly show one example. Okay, so many of you can see so this is example of a HAG English worksheet. First of all, you realize that schools at this level, primary three, you will not have anything that is so, you will not have topic that is so mature, right? They will probably have very simple narrative story, a day out in the park, so on and so forth. But however, we recognize that these children need to be stretched beyond what the school syllabus is really providing. So this is a sample comprehension passage we have, and it's something that is current. Okay, we do not want to have something that is totally irrelevant to the children and something they cannot relate to. So that is not our intention, to make things difficult until they cannot understand. That's not intention. Is to enrich them, not only linguistically but also in terms of general knowledge. So this is a passage on Lawrence Wong having taken over as the new haven't assumed the office of the prime minister in Singapore. So you realize that first of all, the passage they comprises many difficult words. What is an economist? um, what is public service. So uh, so this also gives children an opportunity to learn new vocabulary, because when it comes to English language, vocabulary is king. The more words you learn, the better you become. Why? In the MOE syllabus, you can see PC maths is constrained. Okay, you need to know up to 10,000, for example, right? You need to know this uh, fractions, say for example. When it comes to English, you realize that there's no limit. It doesn't say that you need to know these 15,000 words, you need to know these 10,000 words, stuff like that. So it is not measured in any way. So we take this opportunity, we take every opportunity in our English papers to develop their vocabulary. So what we also and what we also have is a variety of different questions, right? We have the multiple choice questions. So these are very GEP-like questions. So you have your factual questions, your literal questions, of which the answer can be found immediately, right? Then we have second level of difficulty. You have those inferential questions, of which you cannot just pick the answer just by reading it simply. You need to connect the points, right? You need to connect some clues, okay? You need to connect some clues, okay? So this is MCQ GEP like. So in the past GP examination, comprehension is purely MCQ. Okay, first round 4 choices, second round 5 choices. Towards the end of the last 2 years, they have one or two subject open-ended question, but historically it's all the MCQ. So what we're going to do differently for our HGG program is to introduce open-ended question. Why this is important? For my years of teaching a GP program for the last 10 years in my structure, I've seen many students who are good in mathematics, but I've never met many students. I've never come across many students who are good at writing. So even children who are in GEP, they find it hard to string together complete sentence. Okay, but this is absolutely necessary, because at PSLE you need to do that. Okay, so this is part of core program. So if you read this question, these are not your typical P3 MOE school syllabus type of question. Okay, so this requires students to think a bit further, and it allows teachers to enrich the discussion. Okay, so this is open-ended question, which is different from our previous GP program, and we also take the opportunity to extend further. So this week's theme is actually the new primary of Singapore, new primary of Singapore. So we had the MCQ section, we have a open-ended section. We also extended it to a creative writing segment. So creative writing is very challenging for students, especially at the primary 3 level. So every week, when I have a composition writing exercise for children, you will realize that children find it very hard to come up with ideas. They find it very hard to make it interesting. Even if they're interesting idea, they find it difficult to string together sentences that are coherent, grammatically correct. Okay, so this is something that we want to infuse into our HG program, creative writing. Not just students, even adults like us, we find it difficult to write. Uh, Good writing is difficult. You need some flair, but of course, through practice, you can definitely improve. Okay, so here we have some fun activities to ask children. Hey, what if you can you just imagine now you have the opportunity to write a short letter to the Prime Minister? Okay, first of all, you may want to congratulate him and suggest a new initiative. Means do you have some ideas that you think that the Prime Minister can help you fulfill, right? Project that could benefit the community or maybe the environment at large. Okay, and share with you what your hopes are for Singapore. So this gets the children to think creatively, right? So at the onset, we are not so much focused. Of course, we will mark them for grammar, but it's more to allow them to be creative in their thinking. And I can tell you, with these exercises, you'll be surprised some of the ideas they can come up with. Okay, so this is basically our English HGG program. And of course, when it comes to other components, these are standard PSLE uh, staple, right? Editing, which means that you try to identify errors grammatically or spelling wise. And also we have grammar components, right? Subject verb agreement, so on and so forth. So in this program, I would say it is very comprehensive, because not only it covers the mainstream the mainstream PSAD program, but we enrich them further so that they're ready for whatever that comes their way in whatever format, uh, whatever format, in whatever format the MOE decides is going to be when it comes to your child's turn to sit for the HAG selection test. Okay. So at this point, I'll take a quick look at the chat again to see if any questions. Huh. I think that's a very appropriate question. Is GEP for gifted child or hard working child? Uh, okay, I can share with you lah. I can share with you. So actually, hard work can never go wrong. So that's number one. Hard work can never go wrong. Okay, hard work can never go wrong. So no matter how gifted you are, can never go wrong. No matter how gifted you are, things can go wrong if there's no hard work for sure, right? Because why? Because you see, imagine you are in a cohort where everybody is striving, and just because you have done well in one sitting and you think that you can excel, I can tell you that's not true. Many GP student parents who panic after a year or two P4, P5, who say they have to go for remedial. It's true, remedial, which means that they fail their mid-year examination. Fail, really fail, really fail. So GEP mandates that they take remedial lesson until they show improvement. So without hard work, ability can only take you so far. More so is only at primary three. What a, can you imagine how sufficient is a child's giftedness at primary three level to be able to sustain you over the years? It's not possible. It's simply not possible. And hard work makes up for everything. Okay, hard work makes up for everything. Right? Everything can be better with hard work, but nothing can be guaranteed without hard work. Okay. So I would say, right, when we get into GP, I would tell parents it's never a coincidence, no coincidence. First of all, he must be academically better than the rest because that is what the examination result says. He's better than the rest. So that's number one. But how did he become better? A lot of it is through hard work. I've seen students who compared to other GP students, they may not be as gifted because we teach, we know. But through the course of the year, they drill and drill, they drill, and they succeed. And I can share with this story with many, many parents, and this is real story, right? Last year I have this student, right? Okay. This student is from Rosai. His English is amazing, right? But he has very little interest in maths. So in my class, he was always not doing so well in maths until sometimes I get a bit frustrated. Hey, mom, your English is so good. Let's not waste this opportunity. Let's try a bit harder. But when he goes back home, the mom tells me he's very disciplined. No matter what homework the mother gives him, he will keep redoing. So that's one side of him that I didn't know until he passed the first round. I was very surprised. Hey, let's see. So in my mind, it was really an amazing feat. He got through the first round. So when he passed the second round, that was of all my years as teacher, my strategy of all the surprises, this was the ultimate surprise, right? He was he was the least that I expected uh to be able to eventually qualify. But it only shows one thing: hard work pays off, no matter how gifted you are. Okay. Okay. Next, let me just see next question. Okay. Then after this, I will just share with you. So if you have any question regarding our English program, please feel free to let me know. Okay. Now I'll just share with you my stretches mathematics program. HAG, our mathematics program. So again, so these are just some information we can share with you further. But I really more or less go in quite in depth what the structure is for HAG English program. Okay, the core components plus the enriched components. So we have designed the mathematics HAG curriculum to be exactly the same. So we have a three-tier curriculum. We have the core curriculum. So as opposed to the GEP program, right? Last time we go by topic. We go by topic. Okay, we have let's say excess and shortage as a topic. excess shortage. Those are past GP. I just want to share with you the difference. Okay, if just to help parents understand a bit better what's the differentiation. Excess shortage, very specific. We have remainder problems, which the idea of division we have it solved. So it's very uh, it's very specific. So how we train children is this. When you read this question, identify the keywords. If you identify the keywords straight away in your mind, you must be able to relate to one of the topics which you have taught you. Once you relate to the topic, then you try to recall the method. So it becomes mechanical in that sense. Okay, it's a lot of drilling. But of course, this drilling can only get through you maybe round one. Because for the second round, they can have the same question from this topic, but what they only need to do is to tweak certain parameters or certain concepts, and they will get lost again. Okay, so that is really able to differentiate students, right? They can do level one difficulty, this type of question, but level two, level three, you will need real understanding of the mathematical concept. Okay, so that was the GEP program of the past. So currently, now we follow the mainstream program. Okay, the mainstream program is strictly based on the topics in stated by MOE. Okay, but what we do with this program is that, as opposed to our achiever program, it is compressed. Compressed means we go through the basics, but we don't go through as many basic questions. Okay, because we want to make sure that we use the rest of the time to do something that stretches them further. Okay, so we still have the core curriculum, we still go through the fundamentals. So if you do not know how to divide, we teach you how to divide. You do not know those times, we teach you how to do the times. Okay, but that was not the same as the past GP program. So we still stick to the basic. Enrich program. So from week to week, not all weeks we have uh but on certain weeks we will have maths Olympiad components. So these are very stretched questions. So for parents here, you may have signed up your children for maybe some maths Olympiad kind of test, right? Kangaroo MO, things like that. Children will go online and take a test. Okay, so these are similar questions. So these are very much GEP type of question, but of course we constrain it to the knowledge that they already have. We're not going to give them questions that they never learned before, right? Like algebra, things like that. No, it's still constrained to their domain. But these are the really super stretched type of question. Okay. So some of these kangaroo maths is closer modeled to this type of format. Okay. Non-routine problems, creative reasoning, persistence. So as you realize, no matter what people call it, right? Some people call it maths Olympiad, some people call it high ability, some people call it GEP. But you realize at the end of the day, when it comes to maths, it has to be constrained by the syllabus, right? No point testing them on something they have not learned. So when it comes to syllabus P3, there's only so much you can do, right? There's only so many types of questions you can vary, right? Inevitably, those maths Olympiad GEP type of question, they will fall into questions within this type of basket because this type of questions are non-routine. It needs you to know specific method. If you use guess and check or try to reason out, chances of getting right is very, very low. Okay, especially in examination setting. Okay, and of course, again, we keep the general ability. So this again is logic plus what? Plus non-language. Why we call non-language? Because it's part of maths, right? So we also expose children to this. Uh, because this is absolutely necessary. If there's any component that clearly indicates your child is can think can think at the higher level compared to the rest at a certain age level, this would be the test. Okay, because it doesn't require to have undergone a lot of tuition, things like that. It comes up naturally. Okay, which is why they call it natural ability, general ability. Uh I can share with you also to make things more interesting. As you know, PSLE, many of the questions are in context, in real life context. So we want to make it relevant to the students. Some say, hey, teacher, why do I need to learn Gauss theorem? Gauss theorem means you add up a series of numbers, right? With a that is separated by a fixed value. 1, 3 separated by 2, 5, 7, okay? So you add them up quickly, okay? Then teacher, why do you need to do this? So we try to create something interesting for them so that they can apply this knowledge, okay? It could be a code breaking, exercise where you need to sum up quickly and discover the code behind, okay? Just to stimulate to them and make sure that, at least to help them understand whatever you learn, it has some practical application to it. Okay, so that's investigative mathematics. So general ability. So yes, so that concludes my explanation for the P2 maths. So maybe I will just show you one or two worksheets for parents to have a better idea what it entails. The reality is I just want to share with parents lah, because I've been teaching at my church for the last 10 years. I've seen the importance of measuring your child periodically. Because once you fail to do that, once you realize that if the gap is too big, and sometimes it could be too late to catch up, especially at P4, P5 level. So it's better for us to, because at the end of the day, the world doesn't stop. No matter what MOE says, the world, the, the entire society will keep on progressing. People will, children will continue to be better. So the last thing we want is that, we are just simply not aware, what students are doing. But of course, it's important for us to know what the ability of own child. The last thing you want to do is to stress overemphasize community, right? But I think it's also important to make sure that they're keeping up, especially if they are good academically, right? If they show good academic ability. So let me just quickly go through a few maths worksheet. Let me just reshare. Okay, before I continue, I'll just take a quick look at the Q&A, then we can resume. Well, I think it's more important that we have an active discussion. Okay, no more further question. So Shui, if there's any question I missed out, please let me know. Okay, so, oh, not this. Sorry, just a moment. Okay, so I just want to share, okay, this worksheet. Okay, so I just want to share with you, because personally at my stretcher currently, I have students I teach T3 maths at two levels, the Achiever program and the HAG program. And I can share with you what's the difference. So like yesterday, I was teaching the Achiever class, right? So I have about 5, 6 students in the class. So I was teaching them division for the first time. So having taught in the GP program for such a long time, I assume automatically that children are capable of doing two-digit division. But I was surprised that, it is also a reality that some of the things we expect children to be able to be familiar with, but they are not. Okay, but we will handle them. We will still teach them. So in the A program, we make sure they take care of the basics. So when it comes to the HA program, we also have this basic component to make sure that they don't miss out on the basic knowledge which they need to develop. So this is a sample of our HGG Maths program. Uh, Here we have heuristic methods. So we have our so-called, what's it called? We have a set of power codes. So these power codes are just acronyms of heuristic methods, of which children will be helpful, will be useful for children when it comes to solving various type of mathematical question, right? So this is model drawing. So these are staple, so this is basic, okay? So in fact, for P3 mathematics, from P3 math, some of the parents may wonder why is it children are required to draw model? Isn't this very simple? Attended the fair, adult, the rest children, I just do a minus. Why do I draw a model? Now, this is a very basic model. Why did MOE come up with the model drawing? It's not because to help children solve easy questions. It's to help children solve difficult questions. What are question? Algebraic question. Okay, algebraic type of questions. If you don't learn algebra, you cannot solve it, and it's not in the P3 syllabus. But it can only be solved using model. So that is the intention of model drawing. You have to start from the basic and you develop it to the level where you can use it to solve algebraic question. So for the GEP type of question, for the difficult ones, children who are gifted, they can run through the permutation very quickly. They do guess and check, right? Because their mind can work so quickly and they can do quick elimination and they can jump back and forth their guesses. So this is natural ability. But for children who practice hard enough, they have to rely on these methods, right? The heuristic methods, okay? And one of the most powerful method that children can master, especially for P3, P4 maths, is actually model drawing. You can solve the most difficult type of, many of the very difficult type of questions, okay? Through model drawing. So this goes under our power codes. So this is staple, PSLE standard. Then what do we have as enrichment? So you see here for this particular week, we have Maths Olympiad type of question. Okay, not every week, but we want to stretch them. So these questions are not, okay, let me just quickly refresh. Okay, so these are, you could say, the higher order type of question. Okay, higher order type of question. So basically, this is quite common in GP. So you can think about it as simple algebraic expression, right? Three apples plus 5 pears equals to 1950. 3 pears, 5 apples, 1650, right? And children start to compare, okay? So these are the things we expose them to early. So when it comes to the HGG examination for maths and English, I'm very, very certain that this knowledge will be handy. No way they can measure you by the standard school examination standard. No way. Okay. So this type of stretch questions, Maths Olympiad is still constrained to the P3 syllabus, but there's stretch question. So they will benefit. Not only that, even in the regular, even in the regular PSLE, MOE standard syllabus, uh, achiever students may have maybe questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? For the HAG program, within the same topic, we have questions 7, 8, 9, 10, which are more difficult within the same topic, okay? So it is compressed so the main syllabus, we compress. The basic one, we don't do as many, but we extend deeper, right? Do more different type of question. And on top of that, we give you general ability, which is out of the school syllabus. We give you Maths Olympiad type of question, which again, I wouldn't say is totally out of school syllabus. There's some overlap because why? We still need to constrain them to the knowledge which they have. Not reasonable to test them on something which they're not learning anyway, because it's not useful. Okay, so that is our mathematics HGG program. At this point, are there parents here? Any questions regarding our curriculum? Okay, so if not, that will conclude my presentation for today. So if you have any question, feel free to type in the chat, okay? So that we all can benefit, so we can all benefit from this discussion. If there's anything you're interested, it could be the HGG program, it could be our HGG program, It could be how is it compared to the old GP program. Feel free to ask me or anything in general with regards to education, at least up to the P3 level or P4 level.
Andy, you can look at the Q&A.
Q&A, Q&A, wait, Q&A, wait. Let me just get to the Q&A. Okay, let me stop sharing. Let me just quickly go to Q&A. Okay, there are 3 questions. Okay. Okay, I have 2 questions. Does 10% does the 10% selected for HAG equal to 10% selected for uh the EduSave program? I would think is the same, because EduSave is 10% of the school cohort. Am I right? It's not 10% of the national cohort, what? Because there's no way to measure that, right? So I would think that you are selected 10%. But again, I think there's a distinct difference here, because the EduSave program is actually to encourage students to do well in school examinations, right? They are measured in that way. So for this HFG program, is more of selecting for hot are good in certain subjects. Okay, it's not so much of rewarding them in terms of making the effort to do well in school. It's more of identifying them and give them the opportunity to excel in something that they're good at. Okay, so I think the intention is different. But if you're good, if you're EduSave winner, I don't see any reason why you have any difficulty getting the HAG program and vice versa. Okay. Just now you mentioned selected students will be based on what they are good at. So top 10% English and top. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's a very reasonable question. So how then do they pick? Okay, how then do they pick? So say for example in the old system, right? It's not to say that you are top 10, top percent in 10 top. You need to be good in all 4 subjects, right? English, maths, GA1, GA2. You cannot like have 100 maths, 100 in maths, 100 in 50 in English, compared to the person who get 80, 80. Okay, let's say 50 and 50, 50 maths and 100 marks, right? Two subjects, English and maths, total 150. Then the other student, 75, 75. Who gets to the GP? Reasonably, last time, based on what we observed, he has to be the guy with 75, 75 because he's good at both. So, which also makes things a bit challenging for the ministry going forward, because you know why? Because like you said, during one test, if I'm prepared for it, it's possible for me to get 75, 75. But if I don't have the passion for the subject, what do? I study just to get a GP. After that, I find a chore. Especially when the syllabus gets more and more difficult. I find it a chore. Then I want to drop off. Then what do? In the previous GP program, you cannot just drop off English. What? You cannot say, hey, teacher, I don't like maths. Like, like I mentioned, three students, right? One, his maths was only 50. Can he tell the GP that he doesn't want to do GP maths, he want to take the normal major? He cannot. He has to, no matter what, he has to continue. The mother has to supplement with tuition. He got to get tutoring, whatever it takes, go remedial, whatever it takes to pull his grades up again. There is no other way out in OGP program, which is very inflexible. If you're in the position, when the child is struggling, then you will find that it's very stressful. So in this program, you can come in and come out, right? Whatever you're good at 3, you go to all 3. You're good at 1, you focus on 1. If you're good at 2 previously, now you're not interested, you can drop out 1. If you're only good at 1 now, you're good at the other 1 later, you can also enter at a different time. So I would say 10%, I would say that gives the school flexibility. So you take 2 tests, it doesn't mean that you will be eventually offered 2. Maybe you only do well in English, then they will only offer you the English enrichment, which is also very reasonable. P5 high ability classes. Okay, so sorry. So just to clarify, currently our high ability classes are from P1 to P3. From P4, P5, P6 is what my stretcher has been doing for many years now. The achiever program and the higher achiever program. So what is the higher achiever program and the achiever program? So basically, as parents, we all know, as teachers, we all know, right? Children have different learning abilities. So if the curriculum is too difficult for the child in 2 hours, we want to make sure that we make sure the curriculum is manageable for them within the 2 hours. They can benefit. So for children who are quicker, let's say for example division, they really know how to do two-digit division, right? Then they don't have to spend so much time struggling with uh, doing repetitive work. They can try questions more difficult. So at the P4, P5, P6, we don't have the HAG program. We only have Achiever and HA, High Achiever program. These are all based on school syllabus, just that HA, you have the stretch question. Okay, you don't, it's again compressed and deeper. Okay, you don't do as many basic questions, you do more of the deeper question. But as it is now, within the information given by MOE, the HAG screening starts in P3. But they also mentioned that there are different pathways other than P3, means when they're at a different level. So in my mind, this hasn't been specifically stated. How would they be tested? But having said that, I think when things are more dynamic, it's just like how we teach in class, right? If this kid is good, if this kid is good in, if I notice this child is very good at what he does, I'll just tell the mother, hey, why don't you send him for math Olympiad training? Hey, why don't you ask him to do this enrichment? Because we know he's capable of doing things that are extra. So it's likely going to be the same model, right? They will have a certain number that they want to cater to, and as and when they show good ability, it could be a informal test, it could be a recommendation, or it could be come in various form. But I would think that school will have a lot of flexibility in deciding the entry points beyond the primary three level. Uh, Yeah, so in short, the P5 HA program is absolutely tailored for the PSLE examination. It is totally relevant. Okay. Likewise, for the P3 HAG program is more than capable of handling the P3 syllabus. Just that we want to have the extra component because why they now say that there is going to be some form of test at the end of P3 to select them for the HAG program. That's the only components which you are trying to set up your child for. Okay, to be able to sit for the test at the end of primary three. Okay. Okay, so I guess I answered the question for P5. Sure, I don't think I missed out any question. Is GP every child in P5, P6 if is GP program is okay, first of all, we do not have the GP program anymore. Now we call it the HAG program. And and as I've gone through earlier, it is HAG program about 30%, 30-40%, they share the same question, the fundamentals as the Achiever program, which mainstream syllabus. Then we have difficult questions, right? It looks like PSLE. Just imagine all the PSLE, physics students for PSLE. Not all questions are meant for all students. They have the basic question where they assess your basic knowledge level. They have the stretch question where they're going to pick the top scorers, right? So it's the same thing. So you can imagine our HA program, we have a set of questions that's meant to strengthen their fundamentals. But for the HAG program, we have uh, questions within the mainstream syllabus to cater for these students with higher which are stronger in that particular subject. And of course, in our P3 HAG program, currently we have other components that's not MOE specific, which is our general ability, uh, investigative study, maths Olympiad, because these are actually necessary. Just that it's just call it differently. How people call it differently. But if you really look at it, it's just mathematics, it's just deeper skills, right? So uh yeah, so that's one I want to that's something that I want to try to be as clear as possible. So let me just quickly go through for parents who have P1 and P2 children. So is it the same as our P3 HAG? So at this point, my structure, we are still in the midst of, because information is still very new to us. So what we have done is to make sure that we adapt quickly. So at onset this year, we have entered our P3 syllabus to be differentiated from our original GP. For students who parents who are keen to sign our P1 and P2 is primarily still based on previous format, right? So for P3 HAG program, we have P3 English HAG, we have P3 Maths HAG. Okay, two separate courses. For P1 and P2 HAG, they are doing alternate weeks. English 1 week, Maths 1 week, English the other week, Maths the other week. Okay, alternate Maths and English. Uh, then the only thing I want to share with parents that is it relevant? For sure, it's relevant because why? As we know, P1 and P2 syllabus is very straightforward. In school, it's very straightforward. If your child does a bit of work, he more than capable of handling it. So P1 and P2, again, our focus is to we will still focus on the fundamentals. Children don't know how to do the divide, we still have to divide. Do not do the time, we have to do the time. But those are designed to be stretch questions, right? Stretch question right from the start. But having said that, we'll be monitoring the situation closely. So when the assessment criteria for the 2026 HAG program by MOE becomes clearer, then we can also adjust to make sure that our P1 and P2 stays more online in that sense lah. But for sure, P1 and P2, if you join the program, children when they come to P3, you can definitely see you can definitely see the improvement. They don't have to struggle that much with the basics, and even the different question at the school syllabus it becomes easy for them because they really exposed to them at the P1 and P2 level. How is high ability curriculum different from GEP, and in how to excel eventually? Okay, as I think coming back to MOE's intention, the HAG program is not exam centric. It's not meant to help students. Your HAG program confirm you is to make sure that you do even better compared to your peers when it comes to PSA. It's not like that. They also recognize the fact is that if you want to constrain students just to study for exam, it may not be beneficial. Right? Because at the end of the day, you can just buy a school book, you can buy a revision book, right? Just go and drill at home, do your own revision at home, drill. If you work hard enough, you're still gonna do reasonably well in PSLE. Okay, you put in the hard work. But this HGC program is not your standard. As MOE has also said, children may do the program within their school, or they may have to attend the program, uh, attend the program in some other schools. Why did they, because first of all, MOE is still not very clear in what form it will be. Some schools are definitely more experienced in handling children who are high ability. Say for example, GB school, because they've been handling this cohort for so many years, so they were extra programs for them anyway readily. So which is why MOE also says in consultation with this GEP school, they will probably give some guideline further down the road as to what eventually this enrichment will be and in what form. Will it be the same for every second primary school? It may be, it may not be. It could it be in-house? It could be. Could it be go to a neighboring school, especially if your primary school is near a GB school? Could it be that way? It also could be that way, right? Because also in the interest of consolidating resources, things like that. So the point is to develop their interest and strength in a particular subject in our thing in non-academic way. It's not that you go to the HAG program, they're going to give you more worksheets to do. I don't think it will be in that form, right? If more of expanding your perspective and deepen your interest in the subject. Okay. Okay. So that's my answer to Daron's mom. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions here. If parents, if you're interested, if further question, I'll just share my number in the chat. Feel free to drop me any question anytime. It may be related to the HGG program, may be related to any aspects of primary school education, or even if I don't have the answer for you, I could really consult my colleagues who have more experience at other levels and other subjects. Okay, so I will just type in my number here, teacher Andy. So you can feel free to WhatsApp me, okay? So to conclude, I just want to share with parents, The new HAG program is a tremendous opportunity for children to get exposed to otherwise to otherwise to, uh, to a curriculum that's otherwise very restricted to very few, right? Because last time there was even a GP program at the secondary level, but it was abolished many years before the primary one. So the government also think that it's time to abolish it. First of all, why? There are many students who are good at what they do, and it's also very unfair. Just because of one test, you may have a bad day. You don't do well, you don't qualify. It's just not reasonable, right? So it's better to provide, since the schools are teachers are better trained, schools are better equipped, students are getting smarter. It makes more sense to make these resources available to more students and also give them different entry points. You don't just have to do well in one exam. You don't do well, never mind. Next year, maybe you excel in your school examination. Okay, then I'll put you through the program, which is also true. Let's say, for example, uh, students who are on the IB program, right? For students who go straight, some of them in a in a mixed system school, right, they have O levels track and they have the IB track. But if they don't qualify for the IB track based on the PSLE system, based on the PSLE score, does it mean it's all doom and gloomy for them? No. If they do well in their earlier secondary 3 years, they could be actually moved up to the IB program. I've seen many of these students, right? So this is exactly the pathway that the MOE wants to make sure that it is consistent throughout all the levels and not just at the P3 GEP cohort. Okay. So I'll strongly encourage parents to take a look at uh, our program and what it has to offer you. And if you have any question, feel free to ask. But my takeaway is this: for parents, we need to be aware, right? Uh, Not to say that we need to be competitive, but we need to be aware. What are the students in general? What are they doing? Right. Before we call it day, I just want to share with you one story, okay? One final story. Okay, one final true story, okay? True story. So I have this student called Avantika. Avantika now I think she's in secondary three or two. I'm not too sure, I cannot remember, but in Raffles Girls. So when Avantika joined my GEP class in Bishan, I can imagine you work back how many years when she was primary three. So the father said, only one child, one daughter. So the father got very worried because why? The father was in the parent chat. Oh, my child has been going to this school, this tuition center, that tuition center, been taking this. So the father got panic, absolutely panic. Never sent daughter for any tuition at all. Then he also realized that hey, there's this thing called the GP examination at P3 level. So he went to the internet. He went to check some of the more established achievement centers which provide the tuition. So he sent Avantika to my class. So Avantika was very challenging for me because uh, she was very far back in terms of her maths. I have to I have to sit back. I have to ask her to come early or go back a bit later just to go through the basic drill, the times, the plus, the minus, the division, just the basic drill, basic drill, basic drill, basic drill. But one thing about her is she's extremely hardworking. Right. So when she passed first round, for me that was a major achievement. And she was also very proud of herself. Her father was extremely proud of her also. She did not pass the first round. Okay. So I didn't see the father will text me from time to time during Chinese New Year, but I didn't see the father again for the next 2 years until primary six. So I was at the weekend teaching when the father came with Avantika. So I said, hey, how's Avantika doing now? She says in P6. So by the time she was at P6, she was one of the top two students in the primary school. So let's put it that way, if you're 80 plus, high 80 plus students in your primary school, any primary school, you're effectively the top 10% in Singapore, regardless. That one is no question asked. So she was top two in her school, and she was top in her English for like 3, 4 years in a row after primary three. So for me, it was a big surprise, to see how far she has come, when it comes to when it came to it's only a few years difference. You can see how fast she progressed simply because of dedication and hard work and exposure and opportunity. So I still remember that time when I told the father, this GEP is it's just a stepping stone. You do well, it's fine. Don't do well, never mind. But what is important is that at least you know what your child is capable of. Now you have already have a sense of your child is past first round, definitely top 10%. Then you should continue to let her have more exposure, more exposure, more exposure. And you will never know how fast she could develop. So by the time she was primary six, she was invited for the RI DSA through English. But she didn't go through to RI to DSA English, but she went in purely through her PSLE score. So she's doing extremely well. This is only one of the few stories I can share. I can share with you many other stories. Children who didn't do so well in GEP, but the kind of exposure and training and the kind of confidence they gave them, it sets them in it ripens their mind as to what they're capable of. Okay, so that's something I want to share with you before we end tonight's lesson, tonight's session. So if any questions, feel free to text me. I'll be more than happy to share with you more information. If no further questions, I wish all of you a good night, and I hope to have more things to share with all of you in times to come. Okay, Shi, do you have a Q&A? I mean, is there a feedback session? No?
No, there isn't.
Oh, there isn't. Okay. So everyone, there's no further question. Thank you, everyone. Good night. I hope to see you all guys soon. Okay. Bye bye.